Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay Thompson, and I am the Executive Director of the Delaware Maryland Agribusiness Association, as well as the Maryland Grain Producers Association, and partner in the Mid-Atlantic for our Nutrient Stewardship Association. Also joining me today is Amy Jacobs, who serves as the Chesapeake Bay Agricultural Program Director for the Nature Conservancy, as well as Dean Collimer, who is an agronomist and certified crop advisor with GrowMark FS. And so I'm going to kick it over to Amy to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. And thank you, everyone, for having us here today. We're excited to talk about this innovative partnership that we have been engaging in for several years now. And it's really brought together the Nature Conservancy, which are a global nonprofit organization with where we touch down in every state in the US and over 72 countries around the world, and the Chesapeake Bay being a priority of ours, and working in collaboration with agribusinesses across the Chesapeake Bay. And you'll get to hear from Lindsay and Dean of how that's working and some of the details about the work that's touching on the ground. So just to give you a little bit of context of why we engaged in this partnership and why nutrient management is important to the Chesapeake Bay. As you can see from the map here of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, agriculture comprises about 20% of the land use in the watershed, and it's the largest intensively managed land use that we have across the bay. And that agricultural land use comprises 83,000 farms and over 4 million acres of cropland or row crops as part of that. Go next, please. And when we dig a little deeper into the source of nutrients from agriculture in the Chesapeake, we can see from the graph on the right of all the different land uses that we have, row crops contribute by the amount of acres that they have and the load of nitrogen that is coming off of these lands, the largest amount of nitrogen across the bay. So we know that there's an opportunity there to make improvements. And we also know from the graph, the diagram on the left is showing kind of where the largest concentrations of those nutrients, in particular nitrogen, is coming from. So that has led to us with the 4R partners kind of focusing on those key areas. So we have our umbrella organization is the Mid-Atlantic for our Nutrient Stewardship Association, which is a 501c3. And under that, we support local alliances, as you can see on the left being the Pennsylvania 4R Alliance, which is focused in Pennsylvania, and then the Delaware Maryland 4R Alliance focused on those states to really address those areas where we feel we can make the greatest gains. And we're looking into opportunities to be able to expand partners into Virginia and up into New York as well. And what is the 4Rs, right? So we're called the 4R Alliance, and the 4Rs are a framework for nutrient management, being that we apply the right source, amount, time, and place of that nutrient management to be most efficient, which then results in better bottom line for the farmers so that they're using nutrients most efficiently and saving funding and saving how much they're paying for fertilizer and other nutrients. And then it's also providing environmental benefits of leaving less behind. So the more efficient we are, that means that those nutrients are going to grow crops, and leaving less behind that has risk to leave those fields. And we focus primarily in the bay on phosphorus and nitrogen. And you can see here, we have a wide diversity of partners that we're engaging with. And we're bringing the trusted advisors that are supporting farmers on their nutrient management decisions to the table. And this includes both our private partners, as you can see listed here, as well as our public partners from land-grant universities and extension, from federal, state, and local agencies such as NRCS, the state departments of agriculture, and our local conservation districts. And everybody has a slightly different role in nutrient management. So bringing everyone to the table has allowed us to really identify the opportunities to advance together and make progress. And several years ago, we did a study in collaboration with the University of Delaware to survey farmers across the Chesapeake watershed to get a better understanding of the barriers to 4R implementation, these practices. And what we found is that it's access to equipment and technology, the weather and timing that is challenging for when they're applying nutrients, and then the economics and costs of adopting new practices. And finally, what we heard loud and clear is that what the farmers wanted is they wanted local information, so local to their specific geography and area, and they wanted it from a trusted source. And the science is pretty clear that farmers largely rely on their trusted advisors and agribusinesses to be able to provide that information on the latest technologies and techniques and practices to be able to apply to their farms. So the 4R Alliance is primarily focused on 3 different areas to make progress. First is education and outreach. We host field days, we develop locally relevant information for farmers on new techniques and new practices to inform how they are managing nutrients on their farms. We're testing new incentives. So we know that every farm's different and every farmer has different challenges and different needs that they have to be able to try new practices. So we're testing out what those look like and looking at ways to reduce risk and to incentivize progress on the ground. And then finally, we're evaluating the economic, agronomic, and environmental outcomes together as a package for all the work we're doing, so that we know that together it makes a very compelling case to both support greater adoption from the farmers and to show the great work that they're doing, and that it's going to support them having a viable and profitable business while also providing environmental outcomes that are going to improve the Chesapeake Bay and meet our climate goals as well. And with that, I am going to now turn it, oh, sorry, I had one more. So progress to date, very important. So our progress to date so far with including support that we received from EPA that we're very appreciative of to help be able to further our efforts. We've implemented over 133,000 acres of 4R practices across the Chesapeake Bay. And we've reached over 56,000 farmers and advisors through our education and outreach efforts. And I will say that 133,000, we still have a long way to go to get to that 4 million mark. But we know that the 133,000 that we've directly impacted is only a portion of what has been implemented across the watershed. And that the premise of the partnership and the strength of it, of working with those trusted advisors, is that we know even if we're supporting a small percentage of those, that having the trusted advisors at the table and understanding the benefits of these practices and the work that we're doing allows them to help really scale that effort to be able to reach many more acres than we have accounted for just through the funding we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean to talk a little more about specifically a role of an agribusiness within our partnership.
Thanks very much, Amy. Look forward to participating in this presentation today. And just stepping back just a little bit, my role with Growmark FS is as a field sales agronomist. responsible for agronomic training and field testing of crop nutrients and crop protection and biological products. And I cover our whole organization, as it says there in the first bullet, in 6 states where we have 46 ag retail locations across the Chesapeake Bay drainage basin. It is our company is associated with Growmark Inc., the Midwest co-op that's headquartered in Bloomington, Illinois, and we sell the wide variety of crop needs there, as you see listed. Our new general manager is John Richmond. As of about a year and a half ago, we're a fairly small company with about 500 employees, and we've got about 22,000 active farmer customers across our business geography. Our company in the ag business and our support and our posture and marketing strategy is to use 4R nutrient stewardship when we're selling nutrients and recommendations to our grower customers. We're committed to this, have been committed to that 4R strategy for about the time of the inception of the 4R concept came into being about 20 years ago, about 15, maybe 20 years ago. It's focused on the 4R nutrient stewardship principles of both the source, rate, time, and place utilization of nutrients in the best know-how that we have, that are generally referred to as best management practices, that have a component of environmental, economic, and social contexts. And it's that framework that we use to achieve that on the source, rate, time, and place to just enhance the profitability of the grower, enhance the environmental protection, and eliminating or reducing the movement offsite of those nutrients, and the improved sustainability of the whole system that's constantly evolving and updating as our science continues to advance. And here's, I think, some of the basic elements of a good nutrient management system, where we maximize those available organic nutrients first, whether they come from a cover crop, animal manure, or the prior crop. We balance those nutrients with the realistic yield goals, which of course is built on the field history. We want to optimize the nutrient use efficiency through those crop system decisions in the basic management decisions we make. We want to conserve those soil nutrients for plant production and soil health. We don't want them to be escaping. We want to maximize that nutrient use efficiency. And in so doing, we mitigate the loss of those nutrients to air, surface water, and groundwater. And then on an ongoing basis, we evaluate those decisions continually and adapt our system based on the outcome of the annual growing season. This is an example of our crop management program, if you will, or program opportunity that we offer to growers. We want to develop, if you could go back, please, thank you. Thanks, Lindsay. We want to develop a nutrient budget, but in order to do that, we have to first start with our fields, our field mapping. You see over on the right the different elements of a fertility program and a platform. We usually think about a 3-year time horizon where we try to create a system where we cover the entire farm acreage over a 3-year period and reassessing each year. but we create management zones within a field to try to capitalize on those areas of the field that are higher yielding, those that are intermediate, and those that perhaps are much lower in yield capacity. And then we do about a third of the farm soil sampling each year. And we then intensively try to manage each of those management zones and fertility plans across all of those fields for that farm. And then at the end of the year, you see item 6 there, we do a yield analysis to try to interpret what happened, where were we successful, where did we have perhaps a lower yield than anticipated, and then modify our program and our approach for the succeeding year. We have qualified and experienced crop specialists. You hear referred to, and I think Amy mentioned a couple of times, the trusted advisor. Those trusted advisors are very important to have the ear of the grower so that they feel that they're being provided with the best management advice available. How do we do that? You do that with updated tech training to those crop specialists with classroom, in-field, and sometimes virtual training sessions. There's product training and ongoing updates for all of the products that we sell, as well as the practices needed to implement and utilize those products. The CCA program, we're big advocates of that. I am as well. I am a CCA, and about 40% of our crop specialist staff are certified crop advisor and have that credential. And the typical field experience of our folks, on average, the crop specialist has at least 15 years of experience on average. Then there's the uncontrollables. We've been talking about controllables so far in plans, but we know with nature and a natural system out in the environment, we are subject to all kinds of uncontrollables and unknowns, like the heavy rains, the drought. In that third photo there, that's frost damage on corn. And lastly, that's a potassium deficiency in soybeans. So we have to be flexible in our plan and be able to adapt and respond as needed, depending on what Mother Nature gives us at a moment's notice in season as well, beyond our initial plan. And as part of that, we have adaptive in-season tools, especially for nitrogen management. And the nitrogen management, you need to think in the context of the 4 R's, the source, rate, time, and place. What are the right individual decisions for each of those 4 components? We have different tools for utilization to make those decisions. A chlorophyll meter, the pre-sidedress nitrogen test, which is a soil test, aerial imagery or satellite imagery from plane or satellite. Then we have nitrogen modeling systems, and then we can also do tissue testing, as you see Gabby Henricks, who works for us there, has gathered some corn leaves. And then we also have nitrogen stabilizers that we can use depending on the kind of applications, the weather conditions, the rate, and the soil situation, whether or not we can use or should use nitrogen stabilizers to minimize those losses. And in that graphic to the right, I just wanted to illustrate there an example where we tested fixed rate versus variable rate in a field where we were every other pass. We were comparing variable rate where we had 3 different nitrogen rates versus a fixed rate. And in this particular example here that happened about 4 years ago, We reallocated the nitrogen on that field with the variable rate, and we decreased our nitrogen losses and increased yield as a consequence of our variable rate N application, which is the goal. And this last slide here, I just wanted to say that we do have a very good opportunity, in my opinion, for self-reporting by growers. We want to implement good 4R nutrient stewardship practices. And if there is self-reporting allowed, there can be that recognition of acreage where we have advanced 4R practices that are being implemented. But we need to verify to achieve a level of verification, of course, where we can be assured with statistical significance that the planned nutrient application is representative of the actual nutrient application. I think this is an opportunity for us, and we did verify this approach in one of our field projects a couple of years ago through one of our NIFWIF funded projects. So I just wanted to highlight that self-reporting, I think, continues to be a real good opportunity to recognize where we have good nutrient stewardship being applied on a lot of our acres that are underreported. Okay, and at this point, I'll turn it over back to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it. So now that you've heard all about the partnership as well as the logistics and the technical realities, I'm going to answer the question for you, why are we doing all of this, right? So the whole point of the 4Rs with the right source, rate, time, and placement is to benefit the economic bottom line of the farmer, the environment, as well as social outcomes. And we're doing that by increasing the nutrient use efficiency of the plants that we are applying the nutrients to. And so in the simplest terms, what is nutrient use efficiency? Nutrient use efficiency is you are trying to grow more bushels in this context of corn that I'm going to talk about with the fewest pounds of nutrients possible. And so by increasing our nutrient use efficiency, we are lowering the risk of the loss of those nutrients to the environment because they are being taken up into the plant and converted into grain. We are optimizing our per bushel fertilizer budget. So it's costing us less in fertilizer to grow a bushel of, I'm going to talk about corn. And we have higher profitability overall for the farmer. And so increasing nutrient use efficiency is not on accident, right? So the right source, rate, time, and placement for each farm is going to be different. Increasing that NUE takes a lot of effort. You have to gather all of the right information that Dean talked about, make it site specific. You have to consider what your capabilities are on the farm, both from a time and equipment perspective. And there's a lot of differences between what you plan to do and what you can actually do due to the realities of factors beyond your control, such as weather. So remaining adaptive is very important. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one of our projects here quickly. As Dean mentioned, we have been fortunate enough to get a National Fish and Wildlife Innovative Nutrient and Sediment Reduction Grant, thanks to the Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund. And with that funding, one of the projects that we did was a cost share program for split nitrogen application. So what we're trying to do is improve the timing of the nitrogen application on farm, encouraging farmers to increase the number of splits of their nitrogen application and therefore feeding the crop what it needs when it needs it. And so here is one of our examples. And I'm going to go through this here really briefly. Try not to get too bogged down into the semantics of all of this, but what I want you to focus on here is the 178 is going to be the total pounds of nitrogen applied in the control, and 183 is going to be the total pounds of nitrogen applied in the test strip. So we're going from 2 splits to 3 splits, okay? And that primarily occurs in the difference between this pre-emerge application, which is prior to the corn coming out of the ground, and then adding a side dress, which you apply realistically when corn's about knee high. And so we're splitting that 120 pounds of nitrogen application into 2 applications. And so you can see here with just 5 more pounds of nitrogen, but by adding that split, we were able to increase the yield from 157 bushels of corn up to 188 bushels of corn. And so where it was taking 1.13 pounds of nitrogen to produce a bushel of corn in the first control here, it's only taking 0.97 pounds of nitrogen to produce a bushel of corn in our test strip. So by increasing the number of splits, we were able to increase the nutrient use efficiency, ultimately increase the revenue by 12%, and decrease the per bushel fertilizer cost by 3%. One more thing that I think is really important to consider here is the environmental benefits of this. So by increasing the yield from 157 up to 188 with essentially a very negligible amount of additional fertilizer application, we are saving approximately 37 pounds of nitrogen by adding that additional split from being available for loss to the environment. And then one of my last points here that I want to talk about is overall nutrient use efficiency. So you can see here on the left, that is commercial fertilizer use by source over time. And on the right, that is the US corn yield. And so focusing on the time frame between 1996 and 2017, the fertilizer use specific to nitrogen, which you can see highlighted there on the left, increased approximately 15%. And over that same time period, the corn yield increased 42%. So we were able to grow more corn by improving our nutrient use efficiency without having to apply those additional nutrients. And so just some takeaway points here that we'd like to leave you with and leave some time for questions. So we as the 4R Alliance are working through trusted advisors to promote the science and adopt 4R nutrient stewardship. Farmer decisions are hard, right? So my husband and I started farming in 2020, and I never realized how hard farming was, even working in agriculture, until I tried to do it myself. Good nutrient management is not only economically sustainable, but also environmentally sustainable. And we believe that self-reporting is a potential solution for reporting and verification of 4R practices into the Chesapeake Bay program. So with that, I am going to look for any questions. I do see one in the chat asking about whether or not biochar is part of the research that we're doing into our nutrient retention and carbon sequestration. So I will say that we at the 4R Alliance rely heavily on our academic and science partners to inform our education, outreach, and implementation work. And so working through the University of Delaware, as well as the University of Maryland and the Fertilizer Institute, We rely on their expertise on the products and practices, but that's certainly something that we will bring back to our science partners for further investigation.